At the age of 4, I was molested by an older male cousin. Being that young, I had no idea how that traumatic situation would affect me futuristically. Mathematically speaking, when you take a smaller positive and a bigger negative, the equation will equate to a negative number. Molestation was the big negative, while I was the small positive. It caused me to become quiet and look at older men with a jaundiced perception. There was one component innate on the inside of me that would be able to outweigh any negative I faced, the Ruach HaKodesh. At that age, I was unable to grasp in totality what I was capable of spiritually, yet I knew I was able to cry out to God in a prayer with the spirit of expectation. I sought the Lord and he heard me and delivered me from all of my fears. Biblically, King David was a man after God's own heart. And being after God's own heart can mean he sought after the heart of God in his praise, worship, and supplication. It can also mean that David's heart was crafted symbolically to mirror the heart of the Most High. Either explanation of David being after the heart of God draws the conclusion that God knew David's desire was to please his heart, so he answered him. Molestation triggered bad dreams to occur. My dreams were always vivid. I had no idea what they meant. I would wake up at night and run into my parents' room. My father would lay his hands on my head, pray, and send me back to bed. By prayer being my father's initial response to my nightmares, it became my initial response to my reality, which was a nightmare. Hey guys, it's Jacoya of Jacoya Gems. Thank you so much for once again coming back to my channel. I definitely appreciate it. Now, if you could do me a favor, pause the video, like it, comment, share it to your social media platforms, and also subscribe. So on today, I have a serious topic to address, which is suicide in the Black community, specifically in the teenage spectrum. So what I opened up reading was my book, From Victim to Victor, A Survivor's Story. You can find this on lulu.com. Actually, if you just Google my name, it'll come up. You can also find it on Amazon, on as well as Barnes and Nobles. But I definitely prefer if you bought it off of lulu.com, or if you buy it from me directly, I can order it for you. This is a book that I wrote back in 2016. It's about my life from the age of 4, I want to say, to the age around 16, 17. So I'm going to be referring back to this book because I use my life as an example for a lot of things that I talk about, but especially on today. So I want to talk to you guys about the effects that, and also the statistics that we'll start off with that. We'll start off with this, the statistics when it comes to child molestation in the Black community. So this, it says in 2020, the child abuse rate for children of Hispanic origin was at 7.8, indicating that 7.8 out of every 1,000 Hispanic children in the U.S. suffered from some sort of abuse. The rate was highest amongst American Indian or Native American, with 15.5 children out of 1,000 experiencing child abuse. So I know there are also some graphs and risk factors when it was talking about the comparison. And unfortunately, when it comes to child abuse, all communities are susceptible to child abuse. And as we see with the Native Americans, maybe they're more susceptible as far as it being reported because they live a life that is more so autonomous, more so the government's not really in what it is that's going on. And so when we look over into the Black Hebrew Israelites that are living autonomously over in Jerusalem. When we see that, unfortunately, we do see a spike in child abuse and abuse amongst women, men to women as well, because they are living autonomously and they are governing themselves. I'm not saying that self-governing is bad. I believe in self-governing. I'm going to be autonomous, not able to depend on the land. I am just speaking about the fact that a lot of times when lawless people are left without a law, then you see a spike in these things. So what I'm doing right now is I'm about to pull up. It's this one graph that for some reason I'm not able to pull it up right now, but I'm going to link it down below because I do have the link for that graph in comparison with the Black community. So this is talking about facts about sexual abuse in the Black community. So here we go. It said it is more common than you think. In surveys of adults, 1 in 4 women and 1 in 6 men report that they were sexually abused as a child. So this is just those of us that reported it. It's a Black thing too. Many African Americans think that the child abuse is more typical among white people. Statistics show that Blacks are sexually victimized in childhood at about the same rates as whites, near and present dangers. 2/3 of all victims are sexually assault reported to the police were under the age of 18. In nearly 95% of the cases, the offender was a family member or an acquaintance. And so this begins to talk about a lot of the disparities that we see when it comes to the chance of rape and molestation taking place. And it's not to say that rich people don't rape people, because we see what's going on. You don't even got to go there. We see what's going on. But it was saying that poverty contributes to violence in the community. And, a lot of us believe as if our community had more outlets, then it wouldn't be so violent when it comes to a lot of things. African American women are less likely than white women to involve police in cases of child sexual abuse. Fears about betraying the family by turning abusers into the system and distrust of institutions and authorities often led Blacks to remain silent about the family business. Perpetrators are often prideful people who function without fear of being caught or punished. Families with a history of incestuous behavior feeds the ego of this person, as well as make excuses for their behavior. In the court of law, you can be charged as an accomplice to a crime just for being present, knowing what happened and never making an effort to stop it. This is applicable in the spirit realm as well. So let's talk about the fact that as Black people, we don't fool with the police. We do not fool with the police. And so by not fooling with the police, what we have done is actually fed and started a cycle that it is okay for us to be abused, that it is okay for us to be mistreated and misused. There have been times when the police should have been called on parents for overly whooping their kids, where the police should have been called on known child molesters molesting children. But things are handled in the family. Things are handled to the point where it's denied in the Black family a lot of times. Oh, no, he wouldn't do that. I know he wouldn't do that. But we walking around and we calling the little girls fast because she's born shapely, or maybe she's not, or we call the little girl fat, not realizing that that baby is overeating because she feels as if she puts layers on herself, nobody will want her. We're going to talk today. We call the little girl gay because she walking around now not liking boys because a boy or a man has hurt her, or a female has touched her and confused her. So it's like, let me do what it is that's unnatural to me because I no longer want that. Or maybe I do want that. So now I'm confused. We walking around. Let's talk about it. Boys are also abused. About 14% of all young victims of sexual assaults are male, according to police reports. 20% of sexual abuse of boys is committed by women. Among African Americans, homophobia perpetuates the denial of sexual abuse in boys. You don't say. Let's talk about the fact that a lot of men that I know were sexually abused by women. And thanks be to the Most High God that they have enough cognitive ability, 95% of them, to realize that that was molestation. That there is no way between the age of 10 to whatever teenage years that a teenager, a young adult, a grown woman should be fondling you, giving you oral sex, having you give her oral sex, penetrating you from behind, or having you penetrate her. That is rape. That is molestation. So a lot of these boys grew up with an insatiable urge to have sex because they were ejaculating before their bodies were even able to produce the proper seed to create life. Let's talk about the fact that a lot of these young boys pick up on feminine traits. And as a young single Black mother, I am very, very well aware that my emotions run my home. Very well aware that the way that I am in my mind, my body, my soul, and my spirit will reflect in my children. So I cannot be hard on my daughter and not be hard on my son, and vice versa. I treat my children equally, and this is something that you can ask them. But I'm very, 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 very sure that when I speak to my son, I let him know that people in general, but for a man, that your strength comes from how well you can control your emotions, how well and how calmly you can control the room and the atmosphere. And at the age of 10, he has matured leaps and bounds, but everyone does not have this. So you already have a lot of little boys being raised by single women. So they automatically, sometime, if they are not checked and if they are not around women that are cognitive of their behavior, they will end up already picking up on feminine traits. And then we think it's cute. Not me. When we had the little boys dancing and stuff like females, having them put on our wigs and having them put on our shoes, not knowing you're making them susceptible for predatory behavior. You're planting a seed on the inside of them. Or maybe they're acting out what your boyfriend or what your cousin or your daddy or your uncle or your baby's father did to them. We start calling these little boys gay at a young age, when they ain't got a pot to piss in and a window to throw it out of, but we are not aware or we don't care. I just talk about what it is that I know. It's known child abusers, known sodomites in my family who have had free reign and access to multiple children, and it has gone unstopped. But somebody got to hold to them first, and somebody got to hold to them first, and somebody got to hold to them first. And much in the spirit of Dr. Patricia Ann Holliday, who authored Turning Pain into Power and many other books. My mother wrote about her rape, about her molestation, about the incest, about the predatory behavior of a pastor of hers. So this is one reason why I'm so vehement about speaking out against, because of my experience as well. And the denial that little boys are abused. The denial that children can molest other children. It is not plain house. We don't know better. Some of us do. We don't know better, but it's still molestation, and we still all messing each other up because of what we've been exposed to. Some children are predatory, you guys. This is just what it is. Cause and effect. Black women report being more severely abused with greater force. They also report being more upset, greater long-term effects, and more negative life experience from sexual abuse than white women. Among the effects, post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, anxiety, eating disorder, and substance abuse. Okay, so we're going to pause it there. We're going to pause it there. We're going to pause it there. Because I definitely want to get into post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety, depression, want to get into all of that, and we are going to get into all of that. So let's see what part of the brain is affected most by childhood trauma. The worse experience in childhood, the greater the effects will be in adulthood. Toxic stress causes permanent damage to the brain, focusing on the amygdala, prefrontal cortex, and the anterior cingulate cortex, or aka the ACC. And so, however, trauma causes the frontal cortex to become underactivated. I'm going to link several of these articles. So let's get into the frontal cortex so we can talk about exactly what it is and its function. Oh, so this was talking about epilepsy. Oh, I could tie so much stuff in. I'm not going to go there. Cognitive studies in the ventromedial prefrontal cortex. So this is a lot of wordy scientific stuff. So this is basically telling us that the region is implicated in the most human of behaviors. So if this is damaged, then behaviors such as social interaction, moral judgment, fairness, self-control, prediction of the future, and decision-making in conflicts. A number of functional images studies have shown representation of these cognitive processes in the region of the brain. Individuals who sustain damage to this region of the brain do not exhibit deficits in cognition that can be measured with conventional neuropsychological tests. However, they often exhibit inappropriate social behavior and poor judgment with regard to their social and financial well-being. Their choices are more influenced by immediate reward, even though the consequences of their choices are predictable to cause substantial damage to them. It's a lot, you guys. This article is so important, but you don't say so. Children who experience trauma at this age, their prefrontal cortex that helps in the development of them being able to exercise self-control has now been traumatized. We're not even talking about genetics in this video, because that's a whole other side. We're specifically talking about the environmental effect and affect of childhood trauma on the brain. So when Black children begin to act out in a scientific way that says my behavior gonna be messed up, I may not be able to interact socially, I may have poor moral judgment. No, now I'm a delinquent. Now I have ADHD. Now I need to be shipped off and discarded and thrown away. Now I have a mental issue because I'm acting out in a way that science said that I would act out because of these injuries. I'm doing what it is that my body was created to do. So let's continue to talk about diagnosis. So just to let you guys know, I am not anti-therapy. I do have great endeavors to register back in school to actually complete my double major in nursing and psychology soon. I am a mental health advocate. However, I am an advocate for proper mental health and learning the difference between personality, emotional, and mental disorder, and also an advocate for children as well as people in the African community to not be falsely diagnosed without the unwrapping of the abuse that we have been experiencing in our own homes, but also experiencing from the fact that we are in a land that does not belong to us. with things that are here to be set out against us. So this is an article right here. Let me pull this up for you guys. This is on the brain and mind integration. Childhood sexual abuse survivor experiencing hyperbaric oxygen treatment and psychotherapy concurrently. So there are some type of psychotherapies that do not require medication, DBT. It's about mindfulness and control. And so let's actually, I wanna do this first. Let's see what is said when it comes to what age the brain is even done developing at, because that's very interesting to me. And it's going to open up the conversation for a lot of things. So a lot of studies believed originally that the brain was finishing developing around 25. But now newer studies are talking about between the 30s and the 40s. And this would be very, very interesting. Although brain development is subject to significant individual variation, most experts suggest that the brain is fully developed by age 25. For some people, brain development may be complete prior to age 25, while for others, it may end after age 25. The mid-20s or 25 is just an average age given as a checkpoint for when the brain has likely matured. And so we know that in the Black community, we kick our kids out at 18 and we tell them that they are grown and their brains aren't even finished fully developing. And so these are the different process of the brain. And so this is what was interesting to me. There are a variety of functions for which the prefrontal cortex is responsible. We just talked about that. Although significant development of the prefrontal region occurs during adolescence, experts argue that it continues until at least our mid-20s. Wait a minute. Attention, complex planning, decision-making, impulse control, logical thinking, organized thinking, personal development, risk management, short-term memory, cognitive challenges, dietary intake, education, environmental enrichment, exercise, meditation, sleep, optimization, socialization, stress reduction, supplementation, detrimental influences upon brain development. Hold on, y'all. So you're telling me that the part of our brain that gets affected when we go through certain stuff environmentally and traumatically is not even possibly finished developing until we're 25. And some experts say between 30 to 40. So we're walking up, holding children to a standard for which we cannot even maintain. Do you know how many adults can't even have an adult conversation? Can't even have an adult conversation without interrupting, without deflecting. Can't even have a relationship fall apart without wanting to hurt themselves, without becoming violent towards other people. How many women are mean to each other, but we expect our children to operate in a way that we haven't even been able to display that we can operate into them. And then the piety. I'm gonna say the older generation talk for another video. But let's see about this, because back to the book. So I'm not going to read all of this, but this was because you guys could go purchase this book, 2016. I have learned so much more since this. So I was able to process the pain of my life. I went from a size 10 in clothes to a size 1 in a week's time. I was withdrawn more than usual and felt all alone. There was no one I trusted enough to confide in. My depression became visible to my peers via my weight loss. However, it turned into jokes because I wasn't thick anymore. You would think someone would have asked me if I was okay. I was a shell of myself, and it further proved to me what I thought all along. None of my classmates cared about me. That's fine, because I don't care about none of y'all either. At home, my parents, grandparents, and sisters were on high alert. I had been curvy my entire life, so me losing weight was a huge red flag. Yet the way it was handled caused depression on another level I never heard about. My mother took me to a shrink. I told her everything minus the rape. I was open and honest. She labeled me bipolar after one 30-minute session. I was upset, hurt, embarrassed, and I felt betrayed. I was a normal 15, 16-year-old teenager that was born and raised in holiness, who was experiencing conviction turned depression due to being raped. I never told her about the rape because I knew she was psychoanalyzing me and would eventually suggest that I tell my parents. She prescribed me Zoloft. After taking it a few times, it made me sluggish and very depressed. I no longer had trust from my mother, so she'd go through all of my things. One day she found all of my pills and I became a liar once again. The same medicine they wanted to heal me from a disease that wasn't there is the same one that would be used to kill me. While I'm an advocate for therapy and medication, open dialogue and honest communication is the only cure that builds trust. I felt that no one was interested in the truth because it was always considered a lie. I went from being honest to my every move being questioned because I was the one that decided to tell the truth. I wrote letters to God about my hurt, pain, and disdain I felt towards my parents. I felt like they betrayed me. They tricked me. I told the truth, and it all backfired in my face. Life began to become painful to live. Writing was once an outlet for me until my words were taken as literal. My self-expression was robbed from me, and all I was left was the sound I created when I sang. One week it became all too much for me to carry, too much pain for me to expose. I picked up a bottle of Zoloft and took more than half of the bottle. I wanted out. As my older sister and I were in choir rehearsal, I became weak, cold sweats started, and my heart was beating fast. I fell down and she started calling my name and shaking me. She was able to get me to the water fountain and made me drink. She kept asking me, what did I do? I never told her. I didn't want anyone carrying that guilt except me. After that, I never saw the therapist again or took another pill. For me, it was very important to read that part of the book. My parents did what they saw best, which I think a lot of parents should do, is to get their children talked to. However, learning through my own experience and becoming a mom, and then, we just supposed to get better generation by generation. And after all of the studying and everything, I won't let anyone diagnose my children while their brains are being developed. We believe in therapy. We're seeking therapists now. I'm going to tell every Black person, find you a Black therapist. Find you a Black therapist. We carry too much. Black men, Black women, Black boys, Black girls. Go to your school psychologist. Talk it out. Like me being a writer, I would write in my journal. And because so much was going on, my journal when things started to be gone through. One thing that I do not do is I don't read my children's journal. We'll come in when we all decide to write. We'll have times when I ask them, is it anything in here that I need to see? Sometimes they'll swap and read each other's to hold each other accountable. And if it's something that's going on, they come and they talk to me. When we look into the effects of antidepressants in general, they all come with side effects. And the side effects are talked about. They have to put the disclaimers. But let's see this. In June 2005, so this is this warning was extended to include young adults up to the age of 25. That's because studies show that children and adolescents taking antidepressants were were twice as likely to have suicidal thoughts or to attempt suicide compared to patients taking a sugar pill. Why is this happening? Why is this happening? Let's also see this. It's so much, you guys. This is so much. So I want to touch on bipolar since that's what I got diagnosed with, and I was placed on Zoloft. That was something that was very upsetting to me. How can someone diagnose you with something after 30 minutes talking to you, and it's a white lady at that? It was just so much wrong because I sat there and I decided to be honest. I mean, y'all see, Very, very, very honest. And then studying bipolar, I don't have manic highs and manic lows. Manic episodes can range from hours to days to weeks. The Mademoiselle on YouTube who did like a screen thing, I'll link her down below. She openly talks about her bipolar and her ADD. So let's see this. Misdiagnosis. Well, I'm gonna link this article. This is someone else talking about their mixed diagnosis of bipolar. And so I'm gonna link this for you guys as well. And so let me find the exact article because I have a few of them pulled up. Because doctors also misdiagnose bipolar for something called borderline personality disorder, which is something that I have been studying on a lot. BPE. I'm going to look this up. This is important. Okay, so I'm going to only read this short clip and link this down below. In particular, there's evidence that borderline personality disorder is commonly misdiagnosed as bipolar disorder type 2. One study showed that 40% of people who met criteria for borderline personality disorder, but not for bipolar disorder, were nevertheless misdiagnosed as bipolar type 2. So, TIERRA, are you saying you got borderline personality disorder? Sit back and watch this. This is about to be a very, 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 very interesting when I get through. So people with borderline personality disorder symptoms, although there are many categories of borderline personality disorder, go check out Dr. Ramani on YouTube. I cannot link any of her videos for legal reasons. Antisocial behavior, compulsive behavior, hostility, impulsive, irritability, risk-taking behaviors, self-destruction behavior, self-harm, social isolation, or lack of restraint. Are not those all of the things that was said that a person who experienced childhood trauma, their prefrontal cortex would be affected, causing this, right? Mood, anger, anxiety, general discontent, guilt, loneliness, mood swings, or sadness, psychological depression, distorted self-image, grandiosity, or narcissism, thoughts of suicide. So borderline personality disorder and covert narcissism sit like right on top of each other, but they are not the same thing, because narcissist has a lack of empathy, and people with borderline personality disorder oftentimes have too much empathy, and it's an emotional dysregulation. But let's take this a step farther, guys, because like say if a child did have borderline personality disorder and they were prescribed medicine, or an adult prescribed medicine for bipolar, the bipolar medication already comes with the suicide effects. But someone that young, or an adult who is now on bipolar medication, instead of being having therapy, DPT therapy that helps you regulate your mindfulness and your thinking, they're not getting what they need. So this is why the spike in suicide is coming up. And also because Black kids are not able to talk to their parents. Unfortunately, a lot of children, statistically speaking, every child is being raised with at least one narcissistic parent. And unfortunately, now, statistically speaking, Black men raise their children at a higher rate than any other people on the face of the planet. Not applauding y'all for doing what y'all supposed to do, because you're supposed to, but that's what we're going to say. But when we have the households, a lot of times they are split, and the back and forth, the tug and war, that also has an environmental effect. But we're going to stick to this today. So it also begins to talk about how at times borderline personality disorder has been misdiagnosed for what something else is supposed to be, and we're about to get into that. This is what I like. So this is talking about PTSD, but a different form. Are sexual abuse victims being diagnosed with a mental disorder they don't have? The lack of recognition for complex PTSD by the psychiatric establishment means it is difficult for sexual abuse victims who might suffer from it to receive the right diagnosis. Suppose for the sake of the thought experiment that a new psychological disorder was discovered. It is supported by dozens of studies and recognized by some of the world's leading psychiatrists and psychologists, but not by the North American psychiatrist establishment. Be quiet, TIERRA. And let's say the refusal to accept this new disorder is devastating consequences for those people. This disorder is called complex PTSD. So this is C-PTSD. I'm going to leave this article down. So this says the lack of recognition means it is difficult for a sexual abuse victim who might suffer from it to receive the right psychological diagnosis. Rather than being diagnosed with complex PTSD, many will be diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, says Sly Skariskova, a Toronto-based psychotherapist who specializes in trauma. BPD and complex PTSD are different disorders but have similar symptoms, but one major indicator sets them apart. Later research shows that borderline personality is 55% inherited. We're not even going to get into genetics on this video, whereas PTCD is not caused by genetics, but prolonged exposure to traumatic events, usually in childhood. While borderline personality disorder primarily by risk-taking symptoms such as suicidality, impulsivity, self-harm, anxiety, emptiness, difficulties with relationship and extremes of volatile emotions, complex PTSD patients tend to be less impulsive, frantic, unstable, or less likely to engage in self-harm, according to a 2014 study in European Journal of Psychotraumatology. So I want to tell you guys that it is possible to regulate. I don't suffer with suicidal thoughts. After that point, depression would come. Depression comes, depression goes. I know how to handle it. Everyone can't say the same. So what I want you guys to do is look out for signs of possibly being depressed. Dramatic weight loss, weight gain, eating foods that you don't normally eat, your hair falling out, not keeping up with your hygiene the way you normally would, not doing activities that you love to do, you love to enjoy. It could be something as small as a TV show or color. You know, they say crazy women love coloring books. As I look at my coloring book, I'm not crazy though. Also, overspending. That can be a sign. You can have high functioning depression. If you find yourself just going, but never stopping to sit in your feelings, you can be depressed. With this being said, guys, I hope and pray that this can open up a conversation. This can open up a dialogue for families to sit and to talk to one another, to take accountability and responsibility for the times we've pushed our children away, from the times we haven't created safe havens for them, for the times we've covered for their abuser or when we have been their abuser. Let's make our kids feel safe. Let's make our children feel safe as possible so that this suicide don't overtake them. Let's get some help ourselves. because a lot of parents physically intimidate, call their kids out of their names, and then wonder why they would want to kill themselves. That's a natural response. They feel unloved at home, and then they have to go out into the world and deal with the unkindness. That's a lot to deal with. Children deal with a lot. They are told to just exist and they don't matter. They did not ask to be here. So let's treat them as the gems that they are. Let's pray for our children. Thank you guys for listening to me on today. So again, you can buy my book, From Victim to Victors, A Survivor Story. I'm going to write another version because I've learned a lot more. It's exercises in this book for not only the victim, but for the family member. Also, you guys, this video is sponsored by Harvest Essence, my small business. Since we're talking about anxiety, depression, I definitely sell this rosebud, rose hips, and rose petal with nettle leaf and raspberry leaf. Roses are well known to possibly help with anxiety and depression. With that being said, this is Jacoya of Jacoya Gems. Peace, blessings, love, and light. Like, comment, subscribe, and share this to your social media platforms. Thank you once again.